Here we are with Andrew Zaragoza. You go by Drew, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for coming out to Young Records.
Thank you for having me, bro.
Yeah, you reached out, and I mean, I was going to have you anyways because you're a talented artist and you've been working with the great Michael Reed. But you reached out recently, and I was more than happy to have you come by. So thanks for coming by in like what, a week?
Yeah, it's
We
a
made it
pleasure.
happen.
It's an honor.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So, if we can just give the people listening a little brief background on how we met. We went to MI. I went to MI. Did you go to Musicians Institute Hollywood?
Yeah. I first started at MI back in 2008. Did guitar program, independent artist program. Started working there, doing admin work, and then while I was also doing that, I started doing the audio engineering program. That's where I met Michael Reed, a good friend, mutual friend of mine in Austin's, and then after that, I did music business program where I met my fiance, Ronnie. The best connection that I met at MI.
Without a doubt, lifelong.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I went to MI in 2014, and you were helping me get my, what was it? Is it student affairs or
Student billing? Yeah.
Student billing. I'm sorry. And yeah, you really helped me out. And at the time, you were in this band called Cynical, right?
Yeah.
Can you kind of explain what that project was? It was metal, it was metal, hard rock.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Cynical was primarily a metal band, but we'd also have influences rock and blues and jazz and all that good stuff. And so our aim was always to try and make something unique because metal can kind of be stale at times. With the screaming vocals and the rhythms that are so fast that, it kind of takes away the rhythm sometimes. So we wanted to add some flavor into that. And I started that band when I was 13 back in Reno, Nevada. And we did a lot of good shows and a lot of good stuff. And now I'm doing this, and I needed a new challenge. So this is completely different, even from Cynical. And I felt like I really mastered that realm, and now I needed a new challenge. So
yeah, it's a complete different. I don't want to say approach, but it's completely different. I think it's almost refreshing, I would say. Because, yeah, I heard you, and on Cynical, you got those loud screaming vocals, and it sounds badass, but then you can use that timbre and that raspiness and this cool, airy, it's blues, and it's, like I said, it's airy, it's mellow, and you can reach different things through your independent artist kind of vibe. And I like what you've been doing after Cynical, but what you did with like Gypsy Christmas and that's the song, and the albums, but the one in particular, Child of the Sun, correct?
Yeah.
That one, do you want to talk about that? Because that one was a big thing that you marketed, you built up, you recorded, I think professionally, like a full-blown thing, and it made the Billboard charts.
Yeah.
And it was up there for a while.
Yeah.
So you want to kind of talk about that?
Yeah, so I mean, with Cynical, we did a lot of great stuff. So I felt like I had a standard to hit, and I had to go beyond that standard because a lot of people, they didn't know what to expect with my new project. So I kind of had something to prove, so to speak. And so I decided to give it my all for Zaragoza, for Child of the Sun. And then, our teacher from recording, Michael Reed, and I enlisted him to produce it. I've met up with him, and he was totally into the idea of, switching genres and all that. And so he was a big help in it, and that's why it sounds so amazing. The audio quality is surpassed my expectations. And so I took all the experience that I had with Cynical, and I've like interned at record labels, and I've interned at studios. So I used all of that knowledge to finally apply it, and really, working at the record label, it really taught me like what it takes to really promote an album, and the time and effort and the energy that it takes. So, and with Cynical, it was always a challenge too because it was a team effort. So everything has to be ran by different people. As
Oh, I totally sorry to interrupt, but it's like
yeah,
it's
yeah.
having a second family,
Oh yeah,
right?
or
Or
a
third
marriage.
family, or
Yeah, you know, they say it's the closest thing to a marriage that you can get. Um, yeah, it is definitely a family. It's a family affair because those are your brothers, and so you respect their opinions, and sometimes those opinions don't always match up with what you want. Just like family, you don't always agree. You
yeah,
know what I
and it's
mean?
tough because you love the guys and you want it. You're doing the same thing that you guys all love, but sometimes it just, like you say, sometimes if you love them, you gotta let them go.
Yeah,
That kind of thing.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And so that kind of gave me the launch pad for Child of the Sun. And I did some good tours off of that, you know, played some cool venues, House of Blues, Hotel Cafe, went up and down Hard Rock Cafe up in San Francisco, played Reno, Nevada, just kind of, you know, Western region, and just basically sold all my CDs straight to the people and everyone that I knew. And so no one's really buying CDs anymore. So it's actually given independent artists a chance to sell CDs because you don't have a competition of the major record labels, you
Uh-huh.
know? So a lot
And,
of people think that CD sales are dead, but in a way, it's the best time to sell CDs.
and it's one of the most profitable ways of making an income as an artist and a touring artist independently, and
Absolutely.
merchandise and stuff like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And with the record label that I worked at, it was a metal record label, and they really excelled at merch. So like I got to see like, okay, the difference between a local band shirt and a touring band shirt is the quality, you know, and I realized that like fans actually take into consideration, is it an American Apparel or is it a Gildan? Like things that local bands just don't think about because, you know, we're
Yeah.
just trying to, okay, this one's cheaper, we could get more and we could get more out there. But, you know, kids actually want to wear the shirt and represent it, and the artwork and everything has a lot to do with it. So I haven't applied that directly merchandise to Zaragoza, but that's my next step. So I have a lot of plans for like some cool merch coming up for the next album.
That's great. Could we kind of like talk about that for people listening? Because I really want to promote this as also it's an educational, I think, podcast because you've done so much and I've done a lot.
Yeah.
But I'm also learning from you because you're helping me promote and you're still learning.
Yeah,
Kind of
absolutely.
just talk about like if somebody was starting a band or they're going to look and start a tour, what would be the best way to get their merchandise? I know you talked about clothing, and how did you get your CDs? Where did you get them manufactured, or like how did you get that process going?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely like that you brought up about the learning aspect because, I mean, even Michael Reed, he's an inspiration. I think he's in his late 50s, maybe, yeah, late 50s probably, and he's still learning, you know? And so that's one of the reasons that I love him is because you never close the door to knowledge, you know? And that's how we keep growing and keep growing. And so, like, even with Child of the Sun, I made the mistake of going through a different manufacturer for the CDs, and basically what happened was they weren't able to turn them around in the time that they promised me, and so like I was short CDs for sales at you know, when I was in the middle of the tour, like I ran out of CDs, basically had to get them shipped to a city nearby, and so yeah, so it's a
That's
learning
kind of not
experience.
a bad problem.
It's not a bad problem, but
I totally get you.
you know. So it's definitely something I want to avoid in the future. And the quality wasn't bad at all, but I could tell the difference. Like with Cynical, we went through disc makers, and they're a little bit more expensive. But now I see, okay, that's why. Just like going back to kind of the shirts, you know, American Apparel and Gildan, there's a difference. And you know, go look at your favorite bands and see what their merch is, you know. And the thing about merch that's kind of hard is that some of the merch is going to be profitable, like t-shirts, and then some of the other collectible things are not always profitable, but they upsell, you know, like vinyls. Like vinyls are so cool and so special, and you can get like different blue vinyls and, you know, marble red and do all these really cool things. But for independent band,
It's pricey.
yeah, exactly. So it's like you have to just take these things into consideration and figure out what's right for you. An alternative would be you get was it 33s, the smaller ones?
Yeah.
You know,
45. Sorry.
45s.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, that's like, you know, just kind of think outside the box.
That's
and
cool.
just
I didn't
keep
even
thinking.
think of that, but yeah, 45 as a single, front and back.
Yeah, I think I'm going to do that with the next one here. It'd be really cool. And just get creative, something that speaks to your fan base, that represents you. And so when you look at other bands, you know, touring bands and regional bands and national bands, see what they're doing and don't copy them, but get inspired by them. Because if you just straight copy them, then it's not going to sell, because what they're selling is unique to them and it represents their brand, you know?
Yeah, totally.
Branding is a big one that musicians don't think about. Everything has to be like concise with your branding. You know, go look at Pepsi. You know what I mean? Like
Pepsi, Coca-Cola, McDonald's.
Yeah, they've had the same logo for years and years and years and years because they're just drilling it into people's minds, you know? But yeah, definitely merch is a big one.
And can you kind of talk about like, sorry, I almost knocked over something here in the studio. But I would also love to know, I'm forming a band that I'm really excited about. We're almost done. And I'm sure a lot of people would like to know, what's the best way to book a gig, especially at a place or a city you don't know, and how to approach that and booking with other artists and finding that out.
Definitely. There's a couple ways to go about it. So if you're looking to expand out of your city, one of the best ways that most people say is to find other bands in that city and kind of trade off. That can be a good approach, but it can also be tough to find the right bands. And a lot of times the bigger bands in that city, they've built their own fan base, and they're not going to just let anyone onto their show, into their fans. So if you can penetrate their scenes and give something back to them, I think you should always be thinking about, what can we provide for them? You know, how can we service their band?
Very good point.
So it's like, for LA bands, you can definitely kind of use the LA, you know, LA has a name to it, has a brand of its own. So you say, hey, you know, come over here and we'll get you a gig in LA, but you have to pull through on that. And that's hard too, because as you know, a lot of gigs in LA are pay to play. And so these out of town bands, they don't understand that, you know, and the smaller shows in LA that aren't pay to play, well, they're usually not the best shows. But as an up and comer, you have to take those shows, you know. So figure out what you can offer them. And then just really, like, if you can't get those bands on your side, then see where they're playing at. So see what the venues that they're playing at, and then go directly to those venues, and then see the bands that are opening up for them. So if you can't get the headliner of that town, go for the next band. Go, you know what I mean? And then even if you can secure the date yourself, and so that's another thing, is like, promoters and venues, they don't have a lot of trust in out of town bands because you don't have a fan base over there. So why should they book you? So a lot of times I would have to build a show, you know, I'd get a couple openers and then I'd present it to the venue. Like, hey, I got these guys that play at your venue and I got these other guys that play at your venue. They're willing to play with us. Can you put us on a date?
Yeah, so you're producing the whole show.
Yeah, exactly.
Basically.
Yeah, so
on top of trying to just make a living and you figure out what you're going to eat that day on the road.
Exactly, where you're going to sleep, where you're going to eat. So it's taking a lot, but that being said, no one else is going to want to work with you unless you're working yourself. You know, no agents are going to want to hire a band that's not doing all these things by themselves first. So they want to see that you're doing work and then, you know, take a piece of that pie and help you grow it. So that's my advice and there's also online resources like Indie on the Move, Indie Bible. These are like blogs and publications where some of them are subscription based, where you go on there and like pay $25 or something and get like, 1,000 venues contacts, So
Wow, that's pretty great.
yeah, there's resources.
Well, thank you. I'm
Yeah.
sure. I mean, I found that to be very helpful. I'm sure a lot of people are gonna just go out and use that running and get their gig. So if you get a gig, let us know, let Drew know, and comment.
Yeah, yeah. Because basically that's what I've been doing. And then I had a meeting at MI with this lady, Amanda Fiore, and she used to run the now defunct booking agency called Pantheon. And they did everything from like all the big metal bands that were coming out in like the mid 2000s, like the Faceless, all the Sumerian bands. It was basically Sumerian Records booking agency. But now she's just focusing completely on Sumerian. And I asked her, how do you get gigs? And she basically said that you find out where the bands are playing and you go straight to those venues. So coming straight from the source,
And who do you contact at the venue? Do you go to the bartender or?
That's another challenge. So it's like kind of one of those things where sometimes they'll have an email on their website, sometimes hit them up on Facebook. You're going to have to research and oftentimes you'll have to do both. And then if all else fails, get on the phone and call. Because a lot of these guys, if it's an actual venue that doesn't really have a promoter, then they're not always checking their email for bands trying to book. They're worrying about inventory and stock and rent and all that stuff. So if you give them a call, then you might be able to catch them right there. Oh yeah, I think I got your email. Oh yeah, Friday on the 28th. Yeah, I got you guys, no problem.
Yeah, totally.
And the whole time you thought that like they've been avoiding you, but they've just been busy.
Yeah, that's super helpful. Well, like I said, I'm going to be using that in the next year.
Yeah.
You're going to be using it. It's your own advice.
Yeah.
Before we go, the last 5-10 minutes, can you kind of talk about maybe, if you can, the new record or EP that you're going to be releasing to some extent?
Absolutely.
And maybe the influences and what's different with this one and before
as
the
opposed to Child of the Sun. Yeah. So it's the follow-up to Child of the Sun. Once again, I'm working with Michael Reed. We produced it, and we did it at his home studio again. And the main difference is the arrangement of the songs. So Child of the Sun was kind of like a hybrid rock, folk, blues type of album. And then this one's more acoustic singer-songwriter realm. And I had a lot of fear and intimidation that I wasn't going to be able to make it as good as Child of the Sun. And so I spent a lot of time, we'd retrack and retrack. One of the songs I retracked 4 times. And but when I listen back, I can hear that it was all worth it. And I think that I did, meet the level of Child of the Sun, if not surpass it. And so that'll be coming out probably spring, early spring. And I think it's my best work yet. I'm really proud of it. I can't wait to get it out to you guys. And it'll be on Spotify, YouTube, all that good stuff. And as far as influences go, it's really all the songs are about, peace and love. And because I come from a band, Cynical. And so like for 15 years, I was singing and screaming about negative things in life. And, if you have a band called Cynical, what are you going to do?
Yeah, you're not going to church with that shit.
Yeah, exactly. And so with these songs, I had to flip it around and find a light to give back to the world, because I figured, producing those negative, it's like metal and negative music is kind of like a Band-Aid on a wound, as opposed to actually focusing on the problem. And, so it's like,
that's a very interesting way of looking at it.
Yeah, because it's therapeutic in a way. Metal is therapeutic, but it's not healing, So I need to give back something greater to the world. And like, as you know, in these crazy, crazy times that we're living in with Facebook and politics, and everyone has their opinion and no one's, guided on their opinions, and we're just saying stuff right from our mouth without even thinking about it, typing, whatever we want, hurting people without thinking about it to defend our own egos. And so it's kind of like there's a lot of messages in these songs that are trying to bring people back to a more simple way of life and a more meaningful way of life, I think. That's my intention.
I'm excited just from the sound check that we were doing with Levels. It sounded really awesome.
Nice.
And before, I think we said this off the record, but Gypsy Christmas and the Frank Sinatra, those covers,
Yeah.
they're really great. I think it really helps bring your vocals out there more.
Right.
It's more out there in the field. Before we go, do you want to talk about or something that you're excited for in 2020, or like a goal that you have as an artist, individual? It can be either or both. Something that you want to change or really, tackle on this year in 2020.
Yeah, definitely. Starting with probably, it'll be my first time performing for Music Week in Austin, Texas, South by Southwest.
Wow, that's great. That's amazing. Congrats.
Yes, thank you so much. It won't be an official showcase, but hopefully by next year it will be. But anyone who's been to South by Southwest knows that it's hard to tell even the difference between official and unofficial. So starting with that, and then I want to basically push myself to tour and write more music than I ever have in my life, because I feel like now is the time that the world needs it more than ever.
I think that's a great point. Yes.
Thank you.
Love and music.
Yeah.
Do you want to put a band together, or you want to continue doing this on your own?
Eventually, yes. I have a couple guys that I call up when I do shows that require a band. I think maybe down the line, it'd be nice to find some guys that are kind of on the same page as me. But as for now, my main focus is just pulling this out of my soul. And so if I could find the right people to connect with me on that level, and then we'll run with it.
Well, I'm excited. I'm excited for you guys. And so I keep saying before we go, but there's so many things to talk about with you. Last time before we go, you just got engaged to an amazing person, Ronnie. She's sitting here in this room. Do you want to talk about that, the new marriage life, and how that's going to affect going into the new year? I'm sure it's going to be amazing. Your goals together, and yeah,
definitely. I mean, she's my muse. She's always had my back. I feel like I've known her in a past life, and without getting too deep into it, it was the right move that I felt was the right time and the right move to make.
Well, congrats.
Thank you.
And thanks for coming here to Young Records. I'm looking forward to the live sessions.
Thank you so much for having me, bro.
Thank you.